Last week I uploaded a video about all of the things I wish I'd known before college, and I'm so glad that it seemed to resonate with a lot of you, even if you're not even in college right now. This video is part 2, where I'll be sharing some advice for getting through those first years of postgrad life or life after college. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm kchoi. I work full-time as a change management consultant, and I post videos about career and education, as well as travel and other adulting related things. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, then please hit the subscribe button below, as well as the notification bell, so you can know when I post a new video. Going from being a college student to working full-time is a pretty big transition, and I remember my first week of working full-time, and it actually wasn't even full-time. It was an unpaid internship, and I think it was like a few times a week. That first week, I remember I got sick. Like, I got a fever and a body ache, and I think my body was just not used to sitting at a desk all day, being like 100% on and on my best behavior, and just doing like the same focused work for that many hours at a time. It also just gets really monotonous because in college, even if you have a full packed schedule of classes and club meetings and work, every day is still a little bit different. And you also have the ups and downs of having midterm exams and then having a break and then studying for finals, and you're kind of working towards a specific milestone. But when you join the full-time workforce, every week is just kind of the same. So it's not only a physical change where you're probably sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day, which you're not used to, but also a mental change where you just have such a drastically different schedule than you were used to when you were in college. One thing that I think helps with this is to identify a highlight for each day, and this is something that I learned from the book Make Time, which I'll just insert the cover right here. A highlight is basically a goal to accomplish for the day, and it's not the only thing you want to accomplish, but it is something that you want to prioritize. And that highlight or goal could be work related. Maybe you have a big presentation that you need to finish on a certain day, so that's your highlight for that day. But it could also be personal, like trying a different recipe for dinner that night or having coffee with a friend. But the point of the highlight is to really give meaning and purpose for your day, because I can't tell you how many times days would go by and I'd be like, what did I even accomplish this week? Because the days just get so routine and so monotonous. Getting used to a 9-to-5 schedule straight out of college is a lot, and it's a big change, but I think identifying some sort of priority or highlight for your day really helps with that. I was really insecure about my job coming out of college, so I just mentioned in the previous point that I was interning. It was at a fashion PR agency, and for the first few months I was working there a few times a week while tutoring on the other days, and then eventually I eased into working there on a full-time schedule. And I'd also moved back home with my parents, and while I did have a lot of friends who also moved back in with their parents, because if you have the opportunity to do so, it's a really great way to save money coming out of college. But the people that I was focusing on were the ones who had gotten these really high-paying jobs straight out of college, a lot of them being at really big tech companies, because I went to school in the Bay Area, and they had moved into their own apartments, whether it was in San Francisco or in LA or whatever. The thing is, I got to do a lot of cool stuff in my first internship out of college. I got to plan and go to lots of fashion shows and events. I got like free clothes and stuff from our clients, but I was always a little bit embarrassed to tell people what I was doing, and would kind of put myself down a bit or position it as, oh, this is a stepping stone for the next thing. Like, I know that this is not much right now, but this is what I want to do next, and always just wasn't really proud of where I was at the moment. But looking back on it, I really did learn a lot through my own journey and experience, and of course it ultimately was a part of my path that led me to where I am today. I just might not have taken the same path that other people have taken. And even though I might have felt less than other people because of my job, I've had people tell me that my job and what I was doing seemed so cool and fun, and it just goes to show that you really shouldn't compare yourself to others, because you don't know what others are really going through. It's fine to look to others for inspiration and be motivated by that, but you don't want it to get to a point where you're just thinking negatively about yourself. And this is something that took me a while to learn, but is a really important lesson for those early post-grad years. Wherever you end up working after college, I think the most important piece of advice I can give is to just be nice and work hard. Everything we do in life is so incredibly driven by the connections we have and the reputation that we make for ourselves, so treating people with kindness and working hard can really take you a long way. It's fine to show confidence when you enter a job because obviously you're qualified for it and they wanted you for the job for a reason, but you need to balance that with humility. And even if you don't get the ideal job that you wanted, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't put in the same amount of effort that you would have for that dream job. Because that job that wasn't your first choice might open up a different connection that you wouldn't have had or discovered otherwise. And if you aren't putting in your all into that, even though it's not your first choice, then you're only gonna sell yourself short. You never know who you're gonna meet or what connections you're gonna make. So again, just be a nice, thoughtful person, do your work, do it well, and it's gonna open up more doors for you. If you're transitioning from being a full-time student to being a full-time employee, then you're probably getting a lot more income than you're used to, and it can be tempting to change your lifestyle to match that income. You might want to spend on things that you weren't able to when you were a student, and it's fine to do that to an extent. You know, for example, maybe you need some new business attire for your job because you don't have anything that's appropriate. But something I learned when I first started earning an income was that you need to set aside a portion of your paycheck, every paycheck, into your savings automatically or as the first thing that you do. I have a video on how I saved money after college as well as how I budget today, so I will link those in the description box so you can look at those for some more information. But get into the habit of saving money and putting it in your savings account because then it's out of sight, out of mind, and you're less likely to spend it unless it's some sort of emergency or it's time to use it for a specific thing that you're saving for. If you haven't seen my previous video about what I wish I'd known before college, my first point there was that finding your passion as it relates to your career takes time. And this still applies after college because just because you've graduated and gotten your degree doesn't mean you suddenly have it all figured out. For me, I had a journey of working at a couple of different public relations agencies, doing in-house PR, and through all those experiences, learning so much about myself and what I'm good at, what I like, what I don't like, and that ultimately helped me decide the next stages of my career and ultimately led me to my career today. But there are so many other paths out there, and some people will find their passions or a job that they really enjoy sooner than others, and that's totally fine and normal. But until you have actual experience in a job, you're not going to know if it's the right fit for you or if you're good at it or if you like it. So there are going to be those awkward years as you're figuring that out, but it's all just part of the process. And as you go through that process at your own pace and without comparing yourself too much to others, you'll find something that you enjoy, that you're good at, and that challenges you in all the right ways. That's it for this video. I hope it was helpful. I know there were a few of you who commented on the previous video saying you were looking forward to this one because this is the stage that you're at today. So I hope it gave you a little bit of inspiration or even at least just some comfort in knowing that you're not alone in how you might be feeling during this post-grad stage of your life. Before you go, please leave any video ideas or suggestions in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye.